one question that I want to slide in is, was your father or any family members connected?
My father was not.
Okay.
I've had an uncle who's actually my mother's uncle, who was with Danny and Charlie Wagons Fatico.
Okay.
So they brought, these are the guys who brought Johnny Gotti in.
Yeah, it was John Gotti was his driver for Carmine, I believe.
Yeah, well, these were these were the original owners or makers, or whatever way you want to say it, of the Bergen Hunt and Fish Club, which later John brought to Ozone Park. That club came from Fulton and Rockaway in East New York, Brooklyn.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah.
So hold on, John. So I want to. So it's interesting because you talk to people throughout the country, and people tend to kind of glom New York and New Jersey together. And I'll be the first to say, and you know this, New Jersey and New York are just a lot different. So if you grew up in, let's say, Howard Beach, Ozone Park versus growing up in, I grew up near Elizabeth, New Jersey, big
Yes.
difference, right? But so we're both Italian American guys. I do come from a separated family, a broken home, if you will. We're a single mother family. I guess you lived more with your father, or you had access to both. I had access to my father until he died when I was 17. But so I see a commonality where you're like, okay, hey, wait a second. There wasn't a father figure consistent in the home, or two parents. I kind of understand that part, right? And then the other part is I get like, it's like your cat, right? You don't choose your cat chooses you. So I get kind of like how you can get like moored into the life because it kind of finds you or it's around you, right? But one thing though is, to be really honest with you, like we're close in age, and my one friend got into hedge funds, another friend got into mortgage. I, got into a marketing firm. Not that we were like good guys or had access to what you had access to, but like we kind of had similar upbringings to you, not too far away from New York. I know New York, there's more temptation. So I want to hear a little bit more about why you got into it. Because I get the father figure. I get that. I get the, you were kind of around these guys. But like, were you like John A. Light said he was like, went to college. He was like playing baseball, but he just couldn't get out of it. Like, were you always meant for this life? Or did you try to like have a straight life? It didn't work out, and then you pivoted over to organized crime. I just want to get a sense for that part of your decision.
Okay. Well, firstly, I don't want to be, I want to just say that, first of all, everyone makes decisions in life, and you have to be responsible for the decisions that you make. So I'm not blaming or trying to blame being coming from a broken home as an excuse, that because there are plenty of kids and young people, both male and female, that come from broken homes that make it in life, that don't go to the life of crime, and that's a choice that an individual makes. So
hold on, just like there's kids that grew up in a normal, perfect family, and they want to be in the serial murders. So
exactly,
I categorically agree with John.
It's a life choice, right? And we're all responsible for the choices that we make. And I am taking responsibility for mine. I'm not even trying to say that my neighborhood or my parents or anyone pushed me in that direction. That's not, you go in the direction that you want to go in. So I just wanted to clear that up. With that being said, yes, I did see. When I went away in 1990 for a manslaughter conviction. And
how old were you?
I had just turned 20 years old.
Wow. Okay.
So I came home in 2007 and just made my 38th birthday. So, you're talking about a long stretch of time.
Wow.
And so during that time that I was away, there were two major things that took place. And one of them was John Jr., all right? And not to go into this whole thing, but I think that everyone probably on your show, who listens to your show, or who listens to Johnny A. Light, knows the whole situation, what happened with John Jr., right? He's 100% out of that life now, for whatever reasons took place. And I wasn't too happy with what I was hearing, because I was in at the time, at what John Jr. chose to do. And there was someone else who was like a father figure to me, and his name was Tony Muscatello, and he was with John's father. And I had heard rumblings of things that happened with him. He later on got himself in trouble with the Sun Cruz Casino case in Florida, and he's now doing life in prison. So there was two people who I admired that I had heard. I had heard, from messages that came in that they have switched teams, and I was so, coming from these neighborhoods, it's instilled in you that you do not cooperate with law enforcement. End of story. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. And so with that being said, when I came home, I said, forget about this. It's over. Forget about that. Let's, enjoy life and go to work and do what I have to do. And I did try to do that for about 4 or 5 years. And at that point, I had stayed away. I had gotten messages from people that tried to reach out and say they want to see me. Let's be real. As far as people trying to recruit, who better to recruit than somebody that has done that length of time in prison?
Correct.
And they knew me from the neighborhood and whatnot. And I kept my distance. And I stood away, which unfortunately, I wish I would have just continued on that path, and I didn't. The thing that drew me back in, and it drew me into another family, was a friend of mine that I had known in prison, and he came from our neighborhood, Anthony Guzzo, had got in touch with me, and had just come home himself. And we were, like I said, we were away together, and started, come to Brooklyn. I'm at this restaurant, and I started going back out, which I wasn't doing, and staying with Anthony. And now I'm back in Brooklyn, and even though we were Queens guys, big difference. And that is what, there was an incident that took place. Probably
Wait,
a
hold
month.
on. Before we get there, because I want to hear that story, because I read about it online. If it's what you're going to chat about, I want to hear about it. But what is the difference between a Queens guy and a Brooklyn guy?
Well, I mean, listen, we were all different in our own ways.
Yeah.
We just, listen, every borough would knock the next borough, right?
Yeah.
The guys in the Bronx didn't like the guys from Queens or Brooklyn, or really hated the guys from Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And back and forth. And not that there was much of a difference, and I don't have, nothing bad to say about guys from Brooklyn. It's just that we were just different from Queens. I don't know, if you ask anybody from Queens, they would say we're different from the Brooklyn guys, and probably it's going to be vice versa, that they would say we're different.
But I would agree with you in the sense where I get a different feel when I was growing up, because I used to hang out in New York a decent amount.
Yeah.
I get a different feel being in Howard Beach versus Bensonhurst, to be honest with you.
Well, when are you talking about?
I'm a little younger than you, so I want to say in the 90s.
Okay,
I love Dyker Heights, but I don't consider that like kind of mob area per se. Just figure that's kind of where a lot of the guys live. But like if I were to compare neck and neck, say, hey, Bensonhurst in the 90s, going like 18th Avenue Feast and that kind of stuff, which was still kind of strong back then and for that life, versus Howard Beach, I kind of felt like this, and this is like, I'm gonna probably get shit for this. I kind of felt like the soldiers lived in Bensonhurst, but the bosses lived in Howard Beach. That's just my take.
Well, but it's an accurate, that's the truth too. And not that there wasn't any bosses that came from Brooklyn. Yeah. Carlo Gambino lived in Brooklyn. There's no knock to the Brooklyn section of New York at all. Yeah. It's just that they would be telling you the same thing. If you were interviewing a guy from Brooklyn, they would look at us in Queens different. We looked at them, and we all as a group looked at Jersey totally different.
Agreed. All right. So you're hanging out in Brooklyn. You got a chip on your shoulder because you're a Queens dude. What happened? You're with your boy Guzzo. What happened next?
What happens is he calls me one night and tells me to come down to the restaurant, and I go down, and he explains to me that there were guys from Brooklyn, because once again Anthony's a Queens guy, and that he had been dating at the time the owner of the restaurant, and that these guys, one guy threw a party for himself. So us Queens guys ain't even throwing parties for ourselves. He threw a party for himself.
Another Brooklyn date, but yeah.
He threw a party for himself and had about 30-something of his 30-something guys came, and they took a room. And you know, as you know, when you book something in a restaurant, they're gonna give you different prices, and I guess his open bar ended at, let's say, 11.
Yeah.
And then after 11, if anybody wanted any drink thereafter, it's going to be a totally different tab.
Cash
right?
bar or whatever. Yeah.
Yes. So that ends with at 11 o'clock or whatever it was, and now they run up about a $1,500 tab.
Yikes.
Afterwards, right?
Yeah.
So when the guy goes to pay the bill, he just wants to pay the first bill, and when they hand him, hey, by the way, here's a second bill for the bar tab, he, you know, starts a whole big scene and says no, and he's a little drunk and belligerent. Plus, he got 30 guys at the party.
Was he? If you don't mind me asking, was he a connected guy? That guy who had the party?
Supposedly these were guys that were around, and meaning that they were associated to the Colombos.
Got it.
So there's an incident that takes place between Anthony and one of the guys, and I'm not there for any of that. But on the night that he calls me to come down, he's explaining what happened, and I went there for dinner and brought another guy with me, and while we're there, lo and behold, who shows up outside is one of these guys from the party, and he got this big gorilla guy with him, and they're talking to the owner's son, right? And Anthony comes to me and tells me that they're out there, and to just speed the story up, Anthony and I go and approach these two guys and get the better of them. And as a matter of fact, this was right before Christmas, and their friends complained that, these guys got really banged up. You got to see what they look like. And Anthony and I used to kid around and say, we were giving out slips and kicks and slaps for Christmas. But what ensued after that is that these guys obviously ran to whoever they were with, and now we started hearing that guys on the street were looking for this John and Anthony, and they were looking for us.
Who were they? Hold on, can you share who were they with or no?
I had no idea at the time who.
But was it legit? Because it's a lot of guys. You know who I am. Which is half the guys who say that are nobody, because
absolutely they shouldn't be saying that.
But when these guys sent out feelers, the Colombo guys, sake of argument, let's say they got back to their Colombo upline, whether it be a made guy or captain or strong associate, when they kind of put the feelers out there, could you tell, okay, hey, you know what, it's the Colombos and these are like real guys or no real guys, or what was it behind it?
But well, here's the problem, is that at the time, both Anthony and myself have kind of stepped and stood on the sidelines and didn't put ourselves around anybody at that point in time. So it would have been a little hard for them to try to reach out to somebody and figure out where we're at.
Got it.
But we have heard things. And so now, like I said, I just go back a little bit and remind you, and I had been staying away from whoever it was that I was around in the street back then, because I didn't want nothing to do with it no more. So now to go back with my tail between my legs and say, hey, I got a problem, I didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
So I was in a catch-22. So what I did was